So Bloom once again climbed into Thomas's cab and Thomas puffed away, backwards. Soon they arrived back at the junction. Thomas noticed a fork in the track. So they ventured along the old track. Thomas pushed and shoved through bushes and shrubs. They scrunched and scratched as he and Bloom puffed through. They puffed on. Thomas and Bloom steamed under an old bridge, pushed through some more bushes, and stopped in surprise. Bloom gasped. On the other side of the bushes was an unused and very old town. It was covered in ivy and vines. Weeds and bushes covered houses, and stations there were rust-covered bridges. Bloom looked at a brick pile next to the old station. Weeds and shrubs were growing out of the rubble below. Bloom examined the broken-down tower. Bloom and Thomas were excited with their discovery, so Thomas steamed off, hoping to spread the news to everyone. Thomas jolted and jumped along the bumpy track. He blew his whistle loudly. So Thomas blew his whistle again. Then, in the distance, he heard another whistle. Thomas was right. Lashana was taking workmen to set up the fun fair. She heard Thomas's whistle and stopped. So Thomas watched as Lashana steamed away to tell the others the news. Lashana found Mighty Mac at a rail crossing. Mighty Mac soon found Sir Handel and told him the news. Sir Handel told Wayneus. Wayneus told Skarloey. Skarloey told the Thing Controller. And the Thing Controller told Mitch, who went to find Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt was with Emily and Musa at the docks, picking up Musa's sound system, when Mitch puffed in. At the wharf, Thomas managed to deliver his log special on time, but he wasn't too happy with Duncan for tricking him and almost causing an accident. Duncan was sorry. Just then, Mitch steamed in with Musa and Sir Topham Hatt on board. And Thomas steamed out to the wharf. Bloom was exploring the town and arrived back at the old platform when she heard Thomas puffing. Thomas pushed through shrubs and stopped. Bloom went to meet them. Musa and Flora stepped down from Thomas and joined Bloom. Sir Topham Hatt, Musa, and Flora were amazed at the sight of the town. Thomas and the girls were surprised. Thomas and the other engines have heard stories about the town. Thomas dropped off Bloom, Musa, and Flora at Knapford, so Bloom can tell the other girls about the discovery, as Thomas took Sir Topham Hatt to Titmouth to see the other engines. The engines were pleased with Thomas. Sir Topham Hatt gave all the engines important jobs. All the engines whistled and wished. They never had so much responsibility. Then he turned to Mitch, Lashana, and Gerald. Mitch, Lashana, and Gerald were given special jobs too. They felt really important now. So Sir Topham Hatt phoned up Miss Jenny. Miss Jenny spoke to Jack and the team. Jack was excited. Jack's friends honked their horns in agreement. At the narrow gauge depot, Mr. Percival was talking to his engines. The little engines whistled, and Duncan knew the Thing Controller was right. The engines whistled happily. At Knapford, Percy was with his Stylesville and fairy friends, as Rosie steamed in. Back at Titmouth, Sir Topham Hatt was with Musa, Bloom, and Thomas. Thomas and Musa watched as Edward and Bloom set off to search for the tracks. Then Sir Topham Hatt turned back to Thomas. But Thomas wasn't taking any notice of this. He was thinking about being in charge of the restoration. Later, Sir Topham Hatt was with Henry, James, Stella, Sasha and Layla at Brendam Docks. They were waiting for the new engine. Layla was white. A loud sound could be heard getting closer then. From behind a cloud of steam, a brand new tank engine came steaming into the docks. He was shinier, bigger, and certainly stronger than Thomas. Henry and James were speechless. They had never met any engine like Stanley. Meanwhile, Edward was taking Bloom around Great Waterton. They had already found lots of hidden tracks. Edward stopped at a water tower for a rest. Then he and Bloom saw a tank engine coming in the distance. He stopped alongside Edward. Stanley thanked Edward and steamed off. Meanwhile, Thomas didn't know that Stanley had arrived. He and Musa were on their way to Great Waterton. On the way, they stopped in front of Thomas's new engine shed. James and Flora bustled in to take Musa. But Flora and James weren't interested in Thomas's new shed. Musa climbed on board James and James steamed off, leaving a very worried Thomas. Thomas didn't think his new shed was important anymore. Later, Thomas was taking a train of empty trucks to the quarry. On the way, he met Gerald. Thomas still didn't know who Stanley was, but he knew he had to move on. So sadly, Thomas steamed on to the quarry. As he steamed on, he soon forgot to be sad, and he remembered finding Great Waterton was excited. Thomas soon arrived at the quarry. Mavis was talking to Sheridan, who had arrived on Sodor to help with the big project. Thomas whistled happily, but Mavis was too busy talking to Sheridan about Stanley to see Thomas. Thomas was starting to feel left out, and he still didn't know who Stanley was.